Me reí, patrón.
All the dead bodies.
Me re duro.
Oh, sí, ha pensado. Ha pensado. What is it? Yeah, Kerri.
Dame, claro, patrón, ¿cómo es que sí?
In January, Homeland Security investigations started looking into the case of 23-year-old Cristian Ortega Lopez, a Venezuelan immigrant with suspected ties to the notorious Tren de Aragua gang. Homeland Security received support in the investigation from the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The authorities followed up on information that Ortega Lopez and other undocumented migrants were living on the property of a New Mexico judge, Doña Ana County Magistrate Judge Jose Luis Cano, and his wife Nancy initially hired Ortega Lopez for home repairs. After he was evicted from an apartment in the spring of 2024, they allowed him to live in a guest house at their Las Cruz home. The couple, both in their late 60s, posed for photos alongside the suspected gang member during family gatherings in their home, including at Christmas in 2024. Ortega Lopez was identified as a potential Tren de Aragua member through tattoos, clothing, hand gestures, and other content that he posted online. The gang was designated a terrorist organization by the US, and it had been linked to human trafficking and other crimes targeting migrants, as well as money laundering, drug smuggling, kidnapping, and extortion. While living with the Canoses, Ortega Lopez uploaded photos of himself with firearms at a shooting range and as he was holding ammunition. Some of the weapons with which he posed were owned by the Canoses' daughter, April, who was deemed to have allowed him to hold and sometimes shoot various firearms. Ortega Lopez was arrested at a property owned by Judge Cano in late February of 2025. He was charged with being an illegal alien in possession of firearms, with other potential charges to follow. Jose officially resigned in early March. Ortega Lopez admitted that he'd illegally entered the US through Mexico in 2023 and that he'd been harbored by the Canos. 2 search warrants were executed at properties owned by Jose and Nancy in the aftermath. 4 firearms were seized along with 3 phones associated with Ortega Lopez. On one of the devices, the authorities were reported to have found text messages in which photos of 2 murder victims were shared. The victims' bodies had been mutilated, their heads were severed, and their hands had been cut off. The content didn't appear to suggest intimate knowledge of the murders, as the watermark indicated they'd been taken from a Venezuelan news site. During the search, Jose admitted that he'd used a hammer to smash a phone owned by the migrant because he believed it contained incriminating content of him holding firearms. Nancy was accused of conspiring to delete Ortega Lopez's Facebook account. The couple maintained, however, that they had no idea he had gang affiliations before welcoming him in their home. They were arrested on April the 24th, and Jose was charged with tampering with evidence, while his wife was charged with conspiracy to tamper with evidence. That month, the New Mexico Supreme Court decided that Jose can never hold a judicial office again, be a candidate for a judicial office, and cannot exercise any judicial authority in the state. Commenting on the Ortega Lopez case, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi told a media outlet, "This is the last person we want in our country, nor will we ever tolerate a judge or anyone else harboring them." Number 8. Michael Amesbury.
Yeah, mate, everyone can. That's what you should be doing around here, isn't it? The local MP. He's the local MP, Jono. You'll never do it again. Mate, you'll never be MP again. That's all right, mate. You'll never threaten the MP again. Wow.
In the early hours of October the 26th of 2024, 3-term MP Michael Amesbury was involved in a conversation with a constituent by a taxi rank in his hometown of Frodsham, Cheshire, England. 45-year-old Paul Fellows had engaged Amesbury in a conversation about a bridge that would be closed down during the winter. The talk became heated. As seen in CCTV footage, Fellows was at a distance of a few feet from the MP and with his arms by his side. Fellows momentarily turned his head, at which point Amesbury stepped towards him and landed a thunderous punch to his jaw. Dazed by the strike, Fellows stumbled backwards and fell to the ground. At that point, Amesbury charged him and punched him in the face at least 6 more times before bystanders separated them. Cell phone video showed Amesbury shouting at the other man, "Don't threaten your MP. You won't threaten your MP again, will you?" "You effing soft lad." He repeatedly made references to him being an MP, and a female witness said that Amesbury was steaming drunk at the time of the attack. She reportedly had a quiet word with the MP in the incident's immediate aftermath, telling him, "Mate, what have you done? You've messed up everything." Amesbury reportedly replied, "No, I haven't. He was on at me constantly and wouldn't leave me alone. What was I supposed to do? Was I not supposed to snap?" He subsequently went to the police to report being involved in an incident, adding that he felt threatened on the street. However, the footage would clearly show him as the aggressor. The CCTV video was made public 2 days after the incident and caused outrage across Britain, with many condemning it by citing examples of one-punch street attacks that had resulted in death. Fortunately, Fellows didn't suffer any permanent damage and made a full recovery. 55-year-old Amesbury, who'd previously demanded tougher sentences for violent crimes, was charged with common assault on November the 7th of 2024. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer described the footage as shocking, and Amesbury was suspended from the Labour Party, of which he'd been a member for nearly 4 decades. The disgraced politician pleaded guilty to his charge in January of 25, and as he left court, spoke to reporters and publicly apologised to Fellows. During the legal proceedings that followed, the lawyer accepted that there was no provocation from Fellows, but argued that the politician's behaviour was partly rooted in him having been threatened in the past. In 2023, a man was given a restraining order after being found guilty of stalking and harassing him. Still, those factors did little to mitigate the severity of Amesbury's crime, which was exacerbated by him repeatedly declaring his political standing to the victim. At his sentencing in February of 2025, his legal representative argued against community service, prompting the judge at Chester Magistrates Court to sharply reply, "Are you suggesting I should treat him differently to anyone else who punches someone to the floor in the early hours?" Amesbury was sentenced to 10 weeks in prison with a requirement to serve 40% of his sentence. He immediately appealed the decision. His Honour Judge Stephen Everett at Chester Crown Court deemed that the punishment was spot on, but he nevertheless suspended it for 2 years. Amesbury was ordered to carry out 200 hours of unpaid work, undertake an alcohol monitoring program, go on an anger management course, and carry out 20 days of rehabilitation work. In light of his legal troubles, he was pressured to do the honourable thing and step down from Parliament, which he eventually did in March of 2025. Number 7. Nick McBride. In mid-April, South Australian Independent MP Nick McBride was arrested and charged with 3 counts of assault against his wife, registered nurse Catherine. The 55-year-old was subsequently bailed at Narra Court Magistrates Court on May the 7th. The assaults were reported to have taken place on 3 separate occasions at a property in the state's southeast. Details pertaining to the incident were not disclosed, with McBride himself stating, "This is a matter before the court. It's not appropriate for me to make any other further comment while this process continues." McBride was first elected to state parliament in 2018 as a Liberal representative for the seat of McKillop, located in the Limestone Coast region. He retained his seat in 2022, but a year later he quit the Liberal Party, citing dark forces and divisive factionalism as factors in the decision. McBride was a legacy politician, as his great-grandfather, Sir Philip McBride, was a founding member of the Liberal Party and a defence minister. McBride's assault case was expected to stretch out well into 2026. Updates from mid-June of 2025 indicated that he hadn't entered a formal plea. He stated at the time an intention of continuing in Parliament and of running for his seat again in the March state election. McBride was quoted as saying, "I'm going to stick to my resolve that I initially had, and I'm not going to let these personal issues detract from that resolve." Number 6. Robert John May. In April of 2024, the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children received a tip from the KIK messaging app that user Joe Biden 69 had been involved in the distribution of explicit material involving minors. The activity was traced back to Robert John R.J. May, a South Carolina Republican lawmaker and a member of the House of Representatives for the state's 88th district. The 38-year-old politician's home was searched in August of 2024. Homeland Security agents seized nearly 36 electronic devices from his home, including 4 cell phones, 4 hard drives, a laptop, a tablet, and 19 thumb drives. May was determined to have used the handle Joe Biden 69, and several other usernames to exchange 220 obscene files depicting extremely graphic material involving underage victims. He downloaded the content onto his cell phone and home Wi-Fi network, sometimes using a VPN and other times directly to his personal IP address. Many of the victims in the deranged content were of similar ages to May's own 2 children. On one of the seized devices, the police found explicit videos of May from a trip to Colombia. He was seen engaging in relations with 3 escorts who appeared to be underage. May was arrested at his Lexington County home and indicted on 10 federal counts of distributing abuse material in June of 2025. In January of the previous year, months before his home was raided, May had told the House during the debate on transgender care for minors, "We as legislators have an obligation to ensure that our children have no harm done to them." On June the 24th of 2025, May appeared in federal court without legal representation and asked for a public defender. He was held without bond at Edgefield Detention Center, and each of the charges against him carried a 5 to 20-year prison sentence. An update from July the 1st indicated that the South Carolina House Ethics Committee had voted to open an investigation into potential misuse of office and alleged conduct unbecoming of a member. In accordance with House rules, the name of the member wasn't disclosed, but it was widely suspected that it was May. Number 5. Aaron Pamma. On June the 19th, Aaron Pamma, the vice mayor of Live Oak, California, was arrested for his role in an insurance scheme involving a property he owned. Also arrested were Aaron's brother, Simran, and a man by the name of Gurtej Singh. Each man was taken into custody on a $1 million warrant issued by the Butte County Supreme Court. Gurtej had bought a farmhouse in 2023 under a Department of Agriculture mortgage scheme. Within a month, Aaron and Simran, who were friends with the man, were transferred the ownership of half the property. In late 2023, Gurtej purchased insurance for the property. 3 months later, in February of 2024, a fire erupted and severely damaged the farmhouse, resulting in Gurtej filing a false insurance claim. The property was sold while he and the Pamma's brothers collected roughly $200,000 from the insurance company. A joint investigation involving the FBI, CAL FIRE, and the Butte County DA found that the fire had been deliberate. Following their arrest, all 3 men faced charges of arson. 30-year-old Aaron was additionally charged with fraud, perjury, supporting a false insurance claim, and conspiracy to destroy insured property for fraud. Simran, aged 28, also faced a charge on the latter count. Gurtej was charged with fraud, wire fraud, destroying an insured property for fraud, presenting a false insurance claim, and perjury. According to the latest information on the case, the Pamma brothers were bailed out and scheduled for another hearing on August the 13th of 2025. Also arrested in connection to the conspiracy was Javier Molina Bravo, who ran Big Dog Handyman and whom the trio had hired to renovate the farmhouse. He purchased materials worth thousands of dollars from multiple businesses and wrote checks using a non-existent bank account. Molina Bravo was charged with check fraud in March of 2024, but skipped out on a subsequent hearing and was declared a fugitive. Number 4. Kerri Pegg. Following a career as a probation officer, Englishwoman Kerri Pegg transitioned to the prison service, a move that took place around the same time as the breakdown of her marriage. She worked at prisons in Risley, Style, and Liverpool. By 2018, she was a governor at HMP Kirkham, and by all accounts was considered a rising star in the service. At the time, the prison held Liverpool drug lord Anthony Saunderson, who was serving a 10-year sentence for his role in a massive cocaine smuggling operation. Previously considered one of Merseyside's most wanted men, Saunderson was involved in trafficking a quantity of cocaine valued at roughly £19 million in shipments of corned beef from Argentina. Early on, there were some concerns at Kirkham that Pegg was spending too much time with Saunderson in her office. The door was often closed, which was considered unconventional, and staff became suspicious. In the fall of 2018, the drug lord applied for early release, and Pegg approved it, in spite of having no authority to do so. Not long after his release in May of 2019, Saunderson became involved in another massive drug operation, To coordinate with his accomplices, he used EncroChat, a service provider that offered modified smartphones allowing encrypted communication among subscribers. EncroChat was predominantly used by criminals, and it was considered impenetrable. However, the authorities were able to infiltrate the network in 2019, which enabled them to track underworld figures in real time. It led to hundreds of arrests and massive seizures of guns, drugs, cash, and property. Investigators learned that Saunderson's handles on the network were Jesse Pinkman, a drug dealer character on the hit series Breaking Bad, and James Gandolfini, the actor who played mob boss Tony Soprano on the Sopranos series. Saunderson's messages included references to someone named Kerri and buying a Mercedes for his girlfriend. Saunderson joked around about driving around with Peggy in her new car. It became clear to investigators that Saunderson and prison boss Pegg had been romantically involved. It began most likely from her time as governor at Kirkham and continued following his release. Further messages exchanged by Saunderson in the spring of 2020 indicated that the car, of which he was sent a photo, was to be secured through £12,000 or work, meaning drugs. The vehicle was eventually paid for with 34 kilos of amphetamines. Messages between drug traffickers indicated that they were concerned that Saunderson was spending too much time with his girlfriend and away from business. At the time, he and his gang were manufacturing and supplying injectable amphetamine on a massive scale from a lab on the England-Wales border and a storage unit in Aintree, Merseyside. The authorities had enough evidence on their illicit relationship to raid Pegg's Wigan home in late 2020. The woman's arrest was captured on body cam. She denied having an intimate relationship with Saunderson and claimed that their connection was purely professional, explaining that they'd been in touch because he was developing a prison program for inmates dealing with substance abuse. However, the Mercedes he'd gifted her was parked outside the home, and she had a burner phone that she used to communicate with him. A pair of men's Hugo Boss flip-flops and a toothbrush were found at the residence, and the items carried Saunderson's DNA. Further evidence indicated that the woman's financial situation left her catastrophically compromised and impossibly vulnerable to Saunderson. In spite of a generous salary, Pegg was living way beyond her means. She'd bought designer jewelry and clothes, including Chanel necklaces and Jimmy Choo shoes, and had had breast augmentation surgery while serving at HMP Liverpool. She was deeply in debt, had maxed out her 4 credit cards, and had only 6p in her savings account. In 2022, Saunderson was jailed for 35 years for his most recent drug operation. During Pegg's legal proceedings, her lawyer argued that she was naive, gullible, and possibly stupid, but maintained that she was not corrupt. She was ultimately convicted on multiple charges. In May of 2025, 42-year-old Pegg was given concurrent sentences of 9 years for one charge of misconduct in public office, 2 years for a second misconduct charge, and 4 years for accepting criminal property. Number 3. Aileen Orr. In late June, Scottish law enforcement confirmed the arrest of 71-year-old Aileen Orr, a Scottish Borders councillor, following the discovery of a cannabis farm at her property near Paxton, Berwickshire. Also taken into custody was the woman's 29-year-old son, Duncan. On February the 3rd of 2024, Orr called the police in the middle of the night to report that 2 men were trying to break into the country house where she was staying. When the police arrived at the property, they found no trace of the intruders. They did, however, come upon a cultivation of cannabis with an estimated street value of £500,000. In the aftermath, Orr told the media, "I categorically and vehemently deny any criminality alleged against me. I have never, nor would ever, knowingly allow a cannabis cultivation on any property I own." She insisted that she had no access to the specific area of the property at the time of the farm's discovery. In the aftermath of her arrest, the woman was suspended from the Scottish National Party, of which she'd been a member for 55 years. She expressed disappointment at the decision, along with an intention of representing East Berwickshire as an independent. The case was ongoing as of the latest updates. Today's topic was inspired by dogs, damn it. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Jose Murguia, Santiago. In May, a mayor in Mexico's Western Jalisco state was arrested for his suspected involvement in the criminal operations of a drug cartel. Tenochtitlan Mayor Jose Murguia Santiago was taken into custody following discoveries at the Izaguirre Ranch in his town. The Ranch of Horrors, as local media dubbed it, was found to hold dozens of pairs of shoes along with items of clothing and buried skeletal remains. The discoveries were made by the Guerreros Buscadores Collective, a group dedicated to locating missing relatives. The Teuchitlan Ranch was described by the collective as an extermination center with clandestine crematoriums operated by the Jalisco New Generation cartel. The faction had split from the Sinaloa cartel after the military police killed Sinaloa leader Ignacio Coronel Villarreal in 2010. It rapidly grew into a powerhouse boasting nearly 20,000 members. Human Rights Watch described the ranch as an apparent mass killing site. Mayor Santiago was believed to have been working alongside the cartel, as he was reportedly aware of the property's existence but had raised no alarms. In September of 2024, it had been raided by law enforcement, following reports of gunfire, but no suspicious activity was reported. Then, months later, people searching for their missing relatives found the clothes and remains. Follow-up reports on the matter from official sources indicated that the Izagüe Ranch hadn't been used as an extermination center, but as a training ground for Jalisco New Generation recruits. While pledging to investigate the matter further, the authorities didn't comment on the people to whom the shoes belonged and offered no insight on what had become of them. Number 1. Dan Norris. Leading up to April of 2025, English politician Dan Norris was the Metro Mayor for the West of England Combined Authority, or WECA, and the MP for North East Somerset and Hanham. 65-year-old Norris, a career politician who rose to prominence as a Bristol City Councillor in the 1980s, was also the chairman of the Board of Trustees for the League Against Cruel Sports and described himself as a lifelong animal welfare advocate. An investigation into the Labour Party politician had been active since December of 2024, and he was arrested on April the 4th of 2025 on suspicion of assaulting and abusing an underage girl. His constituency home was raided and officers were seen removing boxes from the property. Norris, who'd worked as a teacher and child protection officer, reportedly committed most of the offences in the 2000s, according to a spokeswoman for Avon and Somerset Police. However, there was also an alleged offence that occurred in the 2020s. The spokeswoman noted that the victim was being supported and given access to any specialist help or support she needs. Norris faced charges that pertained to child abduction, abuse, and misconduct in public office. He was promptly suspended from the Labour Party and, a few days later, banned from the parliamentary estate and from entering the WECA headquarters in Bristol. Updates indicated that he was released on conditional bail while the investigation continued. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be tax-free forever or have any and all medical expenses secured for the rest of your life? Let us know in the comments section below.